So if the class does stop in the middle, you'll know why, because they announced that there's going to be an electrical, that they're going to fix the electricity today in Israel. So we'll see if that works. Meanwhile, it's worked great because they're, as usual, they haven't done it. It's already a quarter after, 20 minutes after the time, the cutoff time, and it hasn't cut off. Good. What did we say yesterday? That there's two types of tzaddikim. There's two types of tzaddikim. One of them are like fish, and the other ones are like oxes. Two fish like us. That comes from this sentence that says there's a fish called Leviathan, and there's a big ox which is called Shor Habar, and that in the future they're going to make a war, and each one is going to kill the other one, and there's going to be a meal for the tzaddikim, for the righteous people in the future. So the Rebbe first of all says, okay, what is a tzaddik? What is a Jew? What is a Jew? A tzaddik is like an ideal type of a Jew, an ideal Jew. What's a Jew? A Jew is a person that sees the truth. Let's take an example. What is a human being? Is there such a thing as a human being? Right? What's the difference between a human being and an animal? Right? So there's a lot of people that say there's basically no difference. Human being is just like a very sort of a, how do you say, a complicated animal, or a another that's the whole theory of what is it, of Darwin, all these people, and Freud, Adler, all these psychiatrists, basically all of them, basically all of the psychiatrists from the beginning to the end, with Jung, with Rogers, with all these guys, basically a human being is just a very sort of a sophisticated animal. That's all he is. He's just an animal. It says no. Hasidut says no. That's not at all what a human being is. And also Professor Viktor Frankl also says no. I think he's the only one. What's a human being? The main thing of a human being is that a human being, I mean, first of all, he can follow his conscience. In other words, a human being can actually go outside of his limitations. He can go outside of himself. He can be selfless. He can think about giving others, giving to others. All the religions in the world, for instance, are all selfish. How I can get to heaven, how I can get this, how our group will be big, how our will be powerful, we'll take over the world. But Judaism, and it says, no, we're human beings. And a human being, the essence of a human being is that he has responsibility to others, to the world, to go outside of himself. And he is directed by his conscience. He's directed by his, should be. Animals don't have any conscience, right? Sometimes they show in movies, that they do, that all of a sudden, there's an ape that he has mercy on a little child, King Kong or something has mercy on Fay Ray, whoever it was in the movie. And he acts like a human being. All of a sudden, something wakes up inside of a human being. The Torah tells us something above even conscience. The same type of a feeling, but it's above the conscience. It's where the conscience comes from. Okay, so a tzaddik is a person. That's the difference between a Jew and everybody else, right? Everybody else can be directed by their conscience. A Jew can be directed by the Torah. Ideally, the Jews are here to tell the whole world that they also can be directed by the Torah. That's the 7 Noahide commandments by the whole Torah. And those people are called Chasidi Umatol, and they're called the Chasidim. But a tzaddik, what's a tzaddik? A tzaddik is a person that he is totally devoted in feeling, emotions, heart, mind, sensitivity. Just like you're certain that you exist, I'm certain I exist. A tzaddik is certain that God exists. Just like everybody in the world does things for themselves, right? A tzaddik does everything for God. Because God is a feeling of self, but much, much higher. He's a feeling that there's a creator to myself, and the creator to myself is infinitely closer to me than I am close to myself, and he loves me more than I can possibly love myself. And that's what the Jewish people are chosen for, to tell the whole world how God loves them. God is creating everyone. And yes, God is strict, and God gives, but the biggest gift that God has given all mankind is responsibility. Man has responsibility, and he can follow his conscience to do what's right. How do you know what's right? That's what the Torah is for. Okay, so a tzaddik is a person that feels all this. He feels all this. She feels all this constantly. So there says the Rebbe, there's two different types of tzaddikim. There's some that are like fish, and there's some that are like the ox. The tzaddikim that are like the fish, like the fish, that's Leviathan. That's like the Leviathan. And they like just like a fish lives in water, so they're living in the oneness of God constantly. and they are mostly spiritual. That's mostly spiritual. They're mostly spiritual. In other words, a little tiny bit of them is involved in the world, but most of them is just totally devoted to the creator of the universe. There's what to do, how to bring blessings into the world, how to bring life into the world, how to heal the sick, how to raise the dead, how to. That's a true tzaddikim. But then there's another type, and that is like the ox, shor habar, the refined ox, shor habar. Okay, so what do we say? How did this start off? This whole discourse is explaining a sentence that it says in Psalm 104, that there is a big fish that God created to play with. And it says this is not talking about the God that God plays with. This is the tzaddikim that are getting pleasure from watching the battle between the fish and the ox. That's what it says. There's going to be such a thing. And it says that the fish is going to kill the ox with its fins. It's going to slit the ox's throat with its fins, and the ox is going to gore the fish. And then there's going to be a big meal for the tzaddikim. Okay, this is pretty weird. I mean, the fact that it is weird, it doesn't sound anything, it had nothing to do with, it sounds like some Greek mythology or something like that. You know, what's this got to do with anything? So everything is a metaphor, because basically everything in the world that you see, everything you have a car, you have shoes, you have everything that there is in the world is a metaphor and an expression of spiritual worlds. Everything, trees and birds and fish and oxes. And so these two are their metaphors for two different types of tzaddikim. And that which they kill each other, it doesn't mean killing, it means some sort of elevation. And how it is that a fish elevates an ox by means of slaughtering with the fins, a slaughtering cannot be done with anything that's like a saw. It has to be straight. So how does it do with the fins? Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about. Suffice it to say that this is important to us. This is not just a playing with, how many angels can dance on the head of a pin or something like that. This is talking about reality, me and you. Because me and you, whether we know it or not, or whether we want it, whether we care with it or reject it, we're being created. We're creations. We're being created every instant by God. Everything is being created. That's God is the creator. And Chassidut points out that the creator doesn't mean he just created it a long time ago. And he looks from above like, some sort of a Greek mythological God up in the stars with a great trident or something. God is creating me and you constantly. Constantly. And the tzaddikim are people that realize this, and even more, they realize like I said before, the big gift that God gave us, and that's responsibility. Okay, so it says on the last quarter of the daytime, it says that God comes and he plays with this the fish. Comes and he plays with the fish. I told you a story about that yesterday. Plays with the fish. This is called Samach LaMincha. This is called right next to Mincha. And it is right next to the evening. That's the time of Yitzchak. Yitzchak, he was the one that fixed the prayer of Mincha. Abraham instituted the prayer of Shachrit. Yitzchak was Mincha, and Yaakov was the evening prayer. Religious Jews pray 3 times a day. So the morning prayer, that's by Abraham. And Yitzchak is the afternoon prayer. So Yitzchak, he was the one that made this afternoon prayer. That's the time when it says that God plays with the fish. So first of all, let's just look at this thing. At the word, what does it mean he plays? That's the word tzchok, means happiness and laughter, enjoyment. That's why Yitzchak was called Yitzchak. Tzchok osali Elokim. Elokim is the aspect of God that makes the world appear separate from him. The word Elokim is a name of God, but it's plural. Look, and therefore us, then it says God in the time when it's coming close to evening and things are dark and there's confusion in the world. It says that God plays with this Leviathan. because Leviathan, that is this type of tzaddik that he's totally connected to God all the time, and he's fixing up the world. So God, so to speak, helps him. Like it says, okay, that's Yitzchak. Yitzchak takes bad and makes it good. Chafer Barros. You ever hear a comedian? There used to be a big thing, comedian. I think there still is. Comedians. A comedian takes a situation that usually is not good, and he makes a joke out of it. He tells jokes about his mother-in-law. He tells jokes about whatever, right? Nowadays, the new woke movement, they don't like comedians. They don't like comedians. They don't want to laugh. Everything in the world is very miserable, serious. But nevertheless, there used to be this thing called comedians. And comedians, they would take a situation which was usually negative and make everybody laugh about it. Yitzchak dug wells. That was the thing of Yitzchak. Abraham said, Abraham, his main thing was love. He spread godliness. He said he made a free hotel and gave free food and told everyone to worship, to thank God. And Yitzchak, he said his main thing was he dug wells. Now, what does it mean digging a well? Digging a well means you go to a place that this is an aspect of every Jew, right? He goes to a place where there's a desert and he digs in the ground, and everybody thinks he's nuts. What are you digging in the ground in the desert for? You going to plant something? You can't plant anything there. And he digs until all of a sudden, whoop, he hits water. And as soon as he hits water, that changes the whole entire place. Suddenly there's irrigation, and you can plant more. You can make the plants, and the plants have seeds. You can plant more plants. That's Yitzchak. To take a desert and change it into a fertile place. That's Yitzchak. Taking darkness and changing it into light. That is a joke, a bad situation, and making a joke out of Yitzchak. Making happy from sad. It's explained in another place. That's why we're here. That's why we're here in this terrible, disgusting, what is it? Annoying, frustrating world. In order to reveal that the world is essentially very good. And we have to reveal it. That's a parish that says, Vayayim Shamua. Okay, so said this is what we got up to yesterday. So that's the whole idea of there's two chapters, two paragraphs of Shema Yisrael we're supposed to say every day. The first one says, you have to serve God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, and all of your might. And the second one says you have to serve God, the second paragraph, serve God with all of your heart and all of your soul. And it doesn't say all of your might. And then it says, the second one says, you will have the crops and you'll work in your field and you'll have much plenty. So this is 1 second. I thought that, and the Jews aren't supposed to work. Every guy is supposed to do everything for us. Or the non-Jews will be happy to help us. Why does it say we'll have to do work? He says, because the second paragraph of Shmas doesn't have the word ma'odecha, that you're going to serve God with all of your might. And if it doesn't say with all of your might, that's not called really serving God. It doesn't say b'kol ma'odecha. Like in the first paragraph, like in the first chapter of Shema Hainu, namely, that if you serve God with all of your might means self-sacrifice. Then that draws down from what's called Soviv Kolmim, Imamali Kolmim, the surrounding aspect of God into how God fills the world. That's what's called doing the will of God. This is only if you serve God, B'kol Mildech, with all of your might. What does that mean? Believable, without any limit. Without any limit means you go out of yourself. That's what I said in the beginning of the class. Everybody in the world wants for themselves. That makes a human being equal to an animal. Being selfish. Even the religions. I want for myself spiritually. When I go to heaven, I want to have a good place. And that's a nice thing. Why not? You be a spiritual person, increase your soul. And the essence of life is mesirut nefesh, to give your soul to a cause, to something greater than you, to others, to truth. That's called doing the will of God. B'kol me'odecha, with all of your being, giving yourself away. That's what it means. The Pechin is the level which is mentioned here, over here. If you want to get to this level of Hapam Yilaveh, this level of Levi, which we said that's the tzaddikim that are like fish, to be one with God all the time. This is only by means of serving God spiritually, of the tzaddikim, which are called fish, nuniyoma, which is not the case if you don't have this level of. And those are tzaddikim that constantly are devoted to God with all of their being. They're giving themselves away all the time. They're not thinking about what am I going to get. They're only thinking about what can I give. That's called serving God with all of your being, with all of your infiniteness. Even though that it says, even though it says in the second paragraph of Shema that you listen to the word of God, you are following the word of God. One second. Nevertheless, it's not, you're doing the word of God. You're doing what God says, but nevertheless, it's not total surrender to the Creator. You're still thinking a little bit, what am I going to get? We can also say in this, like it says, but by means of Torah and the commandments, you draw down a unity of zun. And we'll talk about what is zun in a moment, just 1 second. But lahamshich, you want to draw down a unity of ava. This is drawing down a new light, is by means of Mesirat Nefesh. Okay, what's zun? Zun is another way of saying the emotions, the lower aspects of God. Zun is zachar and nekeva, or zer anpin and nukva. That's godliness, how it's relevant to the world. The world was created in 7 days. Right? That's the 7 days to draw down the spiritual aspect of God in the world. That's by means of doing Torah, doing mitzvahs, being a good Jew, a good person. But if you want to draw down the essence of God, which is called God's Abba Be'ima, it's called Chachma and Bina, the plan of God for the world, you want to make that visible in the world. This is not, then doing the learning Torah and doing the commandments and being a good Jew is not sufficient. There has to be self-sacrifice. And self-sacrifice means you do not think about yourself. You think only about others, helping others, doing what God says. You don't care. Like Abraham, that's what Judaism is based on. Abraham, well, was given 10 tests by God, and each one of these tests is proving to Abraham that God is not worth serving, not worth serving. God doesn't keep his promises. God seems to be, indifferent. God seems to be cruel. Abraham, take your son and kill him, right? God, take yourself, circumcise yourself, 99 years old, circumcise yourself. God promised Abraham, I'm going to give you the land of Israel. It's going to be yours. He didn't give him anything. You're going to have children like the stars in the heaven, and only from Yitzchak are going to come your children. But before that, take him and kill him. The whole thing doesn't make any sense. And Abraham didn't get anything, and he served with all of his being. And he said, I'm not expecting anything. That's all I want is to serve you, God. That's Judaism. That's Judaism. God had 10 tribes, Abraham 10 tribes. That's called Mesirat Nefesh. Instead of increasing your spirituality and improving your and enhancing your spirituality and your spiritual future, and that's, you have Mesirut Nefesh. You give away your soul. You give away your spirituality for doing a favor to somebody. Okay, it's easy to talk about. Don't suppose that I'm do this because it's a very it's opposite of human nature. But that's what it says, Davka. That's what it means in Kriya Shema. That's the whole idea of Shema Yisrael. Limsor nafsho, to give your soul when you say Echad. It's supposed to be when you say Shema, you give your soul at one. You're supposed to be, you're thinking only about God and you're not thinking about yourself. But there's a Baal Shem Tov that he says when you say Shema Yisrael, you're supposed to imagine yourself falling off of a mountain and that you're, like the goat they pushed off to Azazel. And rolling down the mountain, all your limbs are getting wrecked. In other words, you're not in the world anymore. That's it. You're dying. You're dead. And you're giving yourself over to God. You know what's going to happen to you. You're not caring about all of your possessions, all of your plans, all of your accomplishments, nothing. You're just, all there is God. That's what it means. What it says over here, Sham Shachazu, that this drawing down is only by means of a vote of ruchnius of a spiritual. Only by means of the spiritual service. That's the Leviathan, that's the fish. Joining your something to nothing, yourself to the God, like a fish. It says the fish have no identity. Fish are one with the sea. The same thing, these tzaddikim, they feel godliness all the time. That's Mesirut Nefesh, self-sacrifice. The echad, when you say one. That's the essence of life. That's the essence of, right? That's what makes your whole body work. If the heart starts acting independent from the rest of the limbs, then that's sick. The same thing when a human being acts independent from God, then that's called sick. All you days of this, you draw down to be Yelaveh Ishi Alai. That's Levi. That's the aspect of Levi, that my husband will accompany me. Gam also, we can say this is the service of the souls of the Leviathan. That's the Leviathan. That's this fish. This from the language of Levi, to accompany God, to be one constantly with God, etc. So Torah and the commandments is not sufficient. It's the attitude that you do the Torah and the commandments. I mean, it's of course it's necessary. It's basic. Every Jew has to do the Torah and the commandments, but just loving God with all of your heart and all of your soul is not enough. It has to be loving God with all of your being, which I'll explain a little bit what that is. Namely, this, it's like it says in the Shulchan Aruch, Orach Chaim, that before you pray, this is Orach Chaim are the laws, day-to-day laws, basically, and the laws of the holidays and Shabbat. This is in the Orach, the Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch. This is the book of Jewish law. Shulchan Aruch, the book of Jewish law. That's the basis, the bones of Judaism is the Shulchan Aruch. That's the Judaism. What's wrong with, like, all these other movements in Judaism, the Reform, because they don't go according to the Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch, that's the basic, the map of Judaism is the Shulchan Aruch. That's all of the laws of Judaism distilled from the Talmud. The laws of the Shulchan. And within that, there's place for argument. There's place for different customs and different, right? Because argument is essential in Judaism to have different opinions, but it has to be within a certain boundary, and that's what the Shulchan Aruch gives the boundary also, where, how much leeway you have in doing what God wants. In the Shulchan Aruch, the one thing it says in chapter, what is it, chapter 98, it says that before you pray, especially in the morning, before you pray, that you have to sit and think about God, how God is creating you, and how God is creating everything, and how basically we are nothing whatsoever. You have to think about that. It's called hitpashtut agashmiut. You have to remove the garment of physicality, your connection to the world. Karov lamaylat nevuah, something like prophecy. Like it's saying in Pri Eitz Chaim. And this should be your attitude when you pray. That should be your attitude the whole rest of the day. The oneness of God. Emios Doresh and Shemonim. I'm sorry. I skipped the line. Like it says about the Arizal, that he said, "In Mahiti Doresh Shmonim Shana." There was one time when the Arizal, Rav Yitzchak Luria, he fell asleep in Shabbat, and the day he used to sleep in the middle of Shabbat like for half an hour, and it was a spiritual thing. It's not like us, we sleep because we're tired. Spiritual thing, and he saw his lips moving. When he woke up, his pupil said, "What did you see?" He said, "It would take me 80 years to explain to you what I saw." In other words, he wasn't limited to the physical world at all when he was asleep. That's what we should be a little bit before we pray. We're supposed to remove ourselves from any connection to the physical world whatsoever. Like the day we die. After all, one day we're going to die, and then we're not going to be connected to the world, but our soul will still exist. So what's that going to be, right? What's it going to be? You won't be connected. So that's the idea of prayer. You're supposed to be like one of these fish, totally devoted to God. It says now that the Holy Temple is gone, there is no happiness and joy, etc. And there's no joy. What does God do now in the last quarter of the day? He teaches children Torah. He doesn't play with this Leviathan anymore. Why? Because this world is a physical place. Therefore, the tzaddikim, that their service in the physical world, they have to do physical commandments. And this is what the rabbis say, that there's one pillar in the world, and it's called a tzaddik, that on it the world stands. And everything, it says in the Talmud, that everything there is in the dry land, there's also in the sea. So just as there are tzaddikim that are like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and they're like the Arizal, and that they're up in this, But nowadays, the main thing is because there's no holy temple anymore. So it says that now the main emphasis has to be on the tzaddikim that are like the ox. What are they? It says, well, everything that's in the sea has its counterpart on the dry land. And the Gemara goes into a big length about what it. It says because really you have to have both. Havaha. You have to have both types of tzaddikim. What are the types of tzaddikim? It's these tzaddikim that they're called like fish. This is nifla v'gavod. This is very, very high. Like for instance, like fish. The fish, they swim in the sea. Also, they swim very quickly and they reach from the lowest to the highest very quickly. That's what these tzaddikim. I'll just tell you a short story, but maybe this will be the story for today. We'll see. Tzaddikim b'gashmius, simcha b'basar. It says, avodas tzaddikim sheb'gashmius, simcha b'basar, etc. Shakalu lamata b'medrega. Says that there are tzaddikim that are like fish, like we said, that they're just in a totally different world than we are. I told you the story the other day, the Baba Sali, we had the Rabbi Yitzchak Abu Chatzera, Rabbi Yisrael Abu Chatzera, and his relatives. And in Morocco, that says there were hundreds of huge tzaddikim like that, right? Tremendous tzaddikim in Morocco and Iraq also, with the Ben Ish Chai and with what is his name? I forgot the name. Rabbi Abu Lafia and Abdul Somoch, tremendous, incredible tzaddikim. These people were, and they were just in the upper worlds. They were up in the worlds. It says that the Arizal and also that what was his name, Yehuda Petaya, he was in the same time as the Ben Ish Chai, that they used to be able to fix up souls. They could fix up souls. They could fix up past incarnations and things like that. They knew whose incarnation was who. They were like on the level of the Arizal. And these are people, their whole lives were just in the spiritual worlds, just a different type of a human being. So, but nevertheless, there's other types of tzaddikim, and these tzaddikim, their work is in the physical world. But these that are called, the ones that are, that's called the ox. The ones that are called fish, they are nifla. These are very amazing. Like for instance, fish that they swim in the sea, poop, they all of a sudden change direction. They can go up, they can go down. This is much, much greater than the tzaddikim that are in the are involved more in this physical world, which is not the case. These tzaddikim that are like fish, they're like the fish in the sea, that they can go from one end of the world to the other end of the world, etc. So I'll tell you the story. The story was that a woman, once there was a boy who came from a non-religious family, and he became religious to Chabad, and they made him a shidduch. They made him a shidduch, a marriage that he should get married. He met a girl, nice girl, and he came home and told his parents that he was going to get married. He met a nice girl. His mother just went out of her mind. She said, "What is this? You're going to get married. You're not going to show us the girl. We're not going to have any say in what's going on." He said, "Listen, Mom, I'm religious, and she's." We've already, if you want to see the girl, he says, now you're going to tell me the girl. Who made this? Who this? I said, well, we asked the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said, yes, I'm going to go and see this Rebbe. So she went into the Rebbe, and she figured this woman, and she went to the yeshiva where the boy was sitting, and sitting, and there was like hundreds of boys there, and she slapped him in the face. Her son slapped him in the face. You're going to make a shidduch. You're going to get married without me meeting the girl first. He said, no, I had intentions. I was going to bring the girl to you. He says, no, I should have seen first. Who told you this Rebbe? So she got a thing to see the Rebbe. So everybody didn't know, what's going to be. And the Rebbe said, yes, you should let her in. So she went in blazing mad, and she came out very calm. She said, okay, Mazel Tov, she said to her son. She was very young. So what happened? So she said, well, I went into the Rebbe, and I said, what is this? First of all, I was very impressed by him. I saw he was a very, very positive, wonderful person, and I was very sort of taken aback. Even though I hate religious people and I hate Judaism, I hate the whole business, but I saw he was something different. So I said, what's this thing about the shidduch, my son? So the Rebbe said, I went up into the heavens. I looked into the book of matches, and I saw that it was a good match. And then when I heard that you were against it, so I went up again, and I looked again, And I saw that I was right, that I looked. And she said, I looked at the Rebbe. I thought, either the man is just totally out of his mind, he's making up the story. And I realized that that's totally can't be. It just can't be. This is a real, true human being. So I said, okay, and if that's the way it is, the upper world's books, but he went up into the world. If that's the way it is, okay, and she accepted it. He accepted it. So it should, the Rebbe was just flying around in these upper worlds and looking in the upper books and saying, says that's these tzaddikim that they're like fish. They can reach to the highest levels. And I think we'll stop today for this. Let's do the next class, which will be the sikha that we started. The reason I'm doing it is I'm a bit apprehensive. They announced yesterday that there's going to be, the electricity is going to go off at 8 o'clock. And now, true to Israeli bureaucracy, it is now 10 minutes to 9, and it hasn't gone off. But who knows? Maybe they'll catch themselves in the go. Okay, so I'll answer.
They heard you were giving a share, so they delayed it.
Could be that this could very well. Maybe they're watching the shir. Could be.
I hope so.
1 second. 1 minute.
So,
Questions over here. 1 minute.